Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. Oh, excuse me. I hope you are having a good week. I am Jen Trum. I am really excited to be here today. I actually just got off LinkedIn. I was doing a little bit of browsing and networking on LinkedIn. And right before coming on, there was a quote from, God, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but the quote was that the most important asset that you have is your mental health. And then it says, take care of yourself. And I really appreciate and value your time because that is my goal. That's my mission in life, is to really help us all take better care of ourselves. So today we are going to be talking about emotions. And if you missed yesterday's session, I highly recommend going to my page and checking it out. It really helps lay the foundation for today's session and then tomorrow's session. So tomorrow at the same exact time, 12 p.m. Pacific, I'm going to be coming on live for the last of the three of the series. And this session tomorrow is going to be about intentions and being more intentional in our lives. So before we get going, a couple of housekeeping things. One, unfortunately, I don't have access to the comments on the screen. I use a system called StreamYard, and StreamYard is really finicky about comments. So sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't. So if you do put a comment, I thank you. And after the presentation today, I will make sure to go in and address the comment and answer any questions that you might have. Secondly, is this will be about 30 minutes, give or take. So if you're not able to stay for the whole presentation, no problem. It's going to be recorded and you can go back later on and be able to check it out on my Facebook page or on my YouTube channel. So let's get going. I wanted to start with first telling a little bit of a story about an emotional roller coaster that I had been on throughout the month of June. I wrote about it in an article that I shared on my Facebook page and my LinkedIn page through a service called Medium, and I will link to that article at the end and put it in the comments for the presentation today. But basically, the article that I wrote was about my kind of rise, fall, and then rise again when I was faced with some pretty dramatic changes and shifts in my life over the course of the month of June. And it really, I think, ultimately taught me so much about myself, about my resiliency, about my determination, and about my love for myself and my love for everybody in the world and for others and all of that. Because I think when we are in emotional suffering, when we are in the worst of pain that we can be in, that is when people show up for us. That is when we reach out and we care for and we care for one another. And then I think that is the time that provides the greatest opportunity for us to care for ourselves, for us to show up for ourselves in the face of the greatest suffering that we can feel, in order to really recognize the importance of taking better care of ourselves. And that was ultimately what was able to get me out of the emotional drop that I faced in the month of June, and was able to get me to a place where now I feel so much more at peace with who I am, knowing that I can face the toughest of emotions. And let me tell you, the emotions that I faced through last month were some of the most difficult for me to be able to talk about, but also some of the most difficult for me to be able to feel. And it really, the hardest emotion that I've found in my life to feel, well, really there's two. I've got two emotions that are the most difficult for me to feel and process through. The first one is shame. Shame shows up as I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not loved. I'm not valued. I'm not appreciated. it is a real beast in terms of an emotion. And I think it's one that every single one of us at one time or another can relate to, because I think it's part of being a human sometimes to have a sense that we're not good enough, that we're not loved as much as we would want to be, that we're not valued as much as we want to be. So that was the first emotion that I faced that I had to work through and had to really go back in terms of where that's come from in my life. Where, at what point did I think I was not good enough, or I was not lovable, or was just not enough? The second emotion that I have really struggled with having to process, and I had to process throughout the, by the events that happened to me in the month of June, is humiliation. Humiliation is another really icky one, because humiliation ultimately is, again, gets back to I'm not good enough. I'm not, enough. I'm not funny. I'm not smart. I'm not whatever. And humiliation can show up in so many different ways. And so those two emotions, being able to process through them and then being able to get through to the other side, is really, I think, what has propelled me to want to do today's presentation, because I want to help you. I want to help show you what the process of having an emotion is. And really, let's talk about what exactly is an emotion, right? I think so often when it comes to the emotions that we don't enjoy feeling, like shame, like humiliation, like anger, like sadness, right? For so many of us, when we have those emotions that we don't want to be feeling in our lives, we do one of three things. Sometimes we'll do two, or simultaneously we'll do them, but we will do one of three things in order to keep ourselves from feeling an emotion that we do not want to be feeling. The first, number one, is we avoid the emotion. We push it away. So in yesterday's session, I talked about how when I was in human resources for so many years, one of the things that I would do is, throughout the day, there was so much coming at me. I think you can relate, right? So much going on, so much coming at me, that when I finally did get off work and get home, the first thing that I would want to do is no longer feel all of the stress, anxiety, discomfort, whatever else was going on throughout my workday. I did not want to feel that anymore. So I immediately went and grabbed my glass of wine. And that was the way to help me relax and, help me unwind and help me, not have to think and worry anymore. But the problem with that is that I'm avoiding. I'm ultimately not really addressing what that emotion was trying to tell me in the first place. So by doing that, by pushing down the emotion and avoiding it with that glass of wine, I wasn't actually getting to the root of what was causing it. Number two is distracting. So that is the combo I was talking about, right? So I'm avoiding it, and I'm also using alcohol to distract from it. And so distracting can be in all kinds of different ways, right? We eat too much, we drink too much, we watch too much TV, we're on social media too much. All of the things that we do ultimately to distract ourselves. Brooke Castillo, who is the host of the Life Coach School podcast, which I highly recommend when it comes to mental health and self-help. She talks about how that these activities that we do to keep ourselves from having to feel the emotions that we don't want to be feeling is called buffering. And I think it's a great word. It's really about buffering away from feeling. And then the third thing that we do in order to really ultimately not feel our emotions, it's kind of interesting, because it seems like by reacting to our emotions that we are addressing it, right? That we are actually doing something about it. But actually, that's not true. Ultimately, if we are reacting to our emotions, we're not really addressing it. I think a good example for me is when I feel anger. And I used to feel a lot of it as a teenager in my 20s. It has taken me many, many, many years to get to the point where I'm no longer reacting to my anger. But now I am addressing my anger. I am going inward when I feel anger to understand what is at the root of this anger. What is really going on that is causing me this level of upset? And it is amazing. And it kind of goes back to yesterday's session where we talked about awareness, because becoming aware of what is really at the root of my anger was so eye-opening and so life-changing, really. So if you struggle with anger, you struggle with, other uncomfortable emotions that we're talking about today, really spending the time to become aware of what are the thoughts, what are the beliefs, what are the stories that are behind that intense emotions, it's going to change your life to do that. I promise you. So ultimately, emotions are energy, right? So you have something that happens in your life. You have maybe somebody who gets angry at you. So immediately kind of a wall goes up, and you have a thought at some point that, I can't believe they're coming at me, or I can't believe this is happening, or whatever. But ultimately, then that thought produces an emotion. So if the emotion that you're then feeling is anger, you then think that that anger is something that must be acted upon, right? Like, I've got to do something about this anger. And so you then react to them, you fight back, or you push it away. And you say, I'm not going to deal with this. I don't want to talk to you right now, or whatever. But the emotion itself, if we really were to explore it, if we were to spend some time and say, hey, what exactly is an emotion? Well, an emotion is really just the flow of energy that's going on in your body. It's moving, it's maybe not moving, it's just there, right? And so I think that then causes us to become confused, that we think this energy is a problem. We think this energy is something that we have to do something about, or that we have to run away from. And so when that happens, we don't realize that if we just allowed that energy to be there, if we spent some time becoming curious about that energy and how it's showing up in our bodies, we can then allow it to flow through us, which is really at the heart, I think, of what it means to live an amazing life. I truly do, because when we do not allow our emotions to be there, to flow through us, to process through us, we are then pushing those emotions down. And when we do that, they're not going away. Like, I think we have this huge misunderstanding and misconception that when we are reacting to, distracting from, or avoiding our emotions, that we're pushing them away, and that they're going to go away and then they're not going to come back. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. Our bodies and our brains are so much smarter than I think we can ever really understand, but we're starting to. Like, the science and the data and the research is getting better and better and better, that says that when we have emotional reactions that we're not addressing, that they will continue to manifest in our lives. They will continue to find other ways, other sneaky ways of coming out. And so that is where this work and this type of processing is so incredibly important. So what I want to do is I want to share with you my screen, and I want to show you, what does it look like? What does it actually mean to process and feel an emotion all the way through? So let me do that real quick. Going to share my screen. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you are able to see this, but this is a document that I have created for my Alive to Thrive program, which is a 6-week program for women in HR. And basically what this document does is it breaks it down and says, hey, you have a crappy emotion come up, what do you do about it? How do you deal with it? How can you address it in a proactive way instead of continuing to avoid, distract, and react? So, number one is the unpleasant emotion arises. There it is, right? You've got anger, you've got sadness, you've got fear, you've got doubt. Something rises up in you. Happens every day, right? Like we have negative and positive emotions happen 50% of the time. So if you are not aware of when those emotions are coming up for you, then they're going to just be there, and the actions that you're going to take are going to reflect them. So the awareness of the unpleasant emotion is number one, and it's so important because it allows you to then start to be able to work through it. Number two, notice how your mind is going to launch into some story, right? I'm failing. I'm not enough. He did this to me. She's this, right? Stories are immediately going to come up when we feel an intense emotion. That's what it means to be human. So catching that and being aware of what story comes up for you when you start feeling an unpleasant emotion is really going to help you in terms of recognizing how you can move through it. Number three, this is so important. Stop yourself. Catch yourself starting to go into stories and recognize that that's what is happening, because the more that you allow your brain to go into the rabbit hole and go down the hill as a snowball, the more that you allow that, the more that you are contributing to your suffering. And we don't want that, right? We do not want you to actually be in control of your suffering. We want to move away from that and get you to the point where your life can be yin and yang, 50-50, but you're not going to get sucked into the drama. So stopping yourself is massively important. Number three, redirect your mind. And this is going to take work. So you got to stick with me on this. Redirect your mind away from the thoughts and towards the sensations in your body. What exactly is going on in your body? What does that energy feel like? You want to really become as specific as possible and name it. So really being conscious around what that is going to be tremendously valuable. So it could come up for you. Like, I was talking earlier about how I had this shame spiral after, some events that happened in June. And that comes up very uncomfortably. That's a really uncomfortable emotion for me to feel because I get really, really tight in my stomach, almost like a ball, right? Like, "Urgh." And it ends up going up and down into my chest because my heart is beating really fast. I've got clammy skin. I'm maybe a little shaky. I am kind of feeling the movement of that. And so I allow that and I name it. And I recognize when it starts to shift or to move in any direction. I'm very aware of that as I go through this process. Next one is breathe. Allow yourself to take some really deep breaths, especially if the emotion that you're feeling is really intense. Because if you breathe through it very deeply and very intentionally, you are going to start to allow that emotion to process and flow through you. So you want to breathe through it. You want to allow it to be there without thinking that anything's gone wrong, without thinking that there's a problem with that energy being in your body at that moment. I think that is one of the things that for every single one of us, we struggle with, is when that intense, uncomfortable energy and emotion arises in our body, our brains immediately think something's gone horribly wrong. Like something has gone horribly wrong, right? And when we can remind ourselves that no, nothing has gone horribly wrong, that you're okay and that you're going to be safe and you're not going to die, then I think that will allow you and allow your body and allow your brain to start to come back together and align again. So number 7 is your brain is really, 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 I can't say it enough. Your brain is really going to want to go back into the thoughts and stories. That is going to be its go to. That is going to be what it's been used to for your entire life. So the key here is you don't want to allow it. You really do not want to allow that to happen. And you want to encourage yourself that you can do this. You can absolutely do this. But I will say, I want to add with this that there are times in our lives when we're at work, we are at a meeting, we're in a situation where that intense emotion rises for us, and we just cannot just walk up, stand up and walk out of the room so we can go feel our emotion for the next 20 minutes, right? There are times where you are going to have to avoid, when you are going to have to distract. But the key, I think, with this work is that you come back to it and that you recognize that feeling that intense emotion is going to be something that's going to continue to come up for you until you really truly address it. So it's okay that you may have to carry it around. I almost say it's like carrying around baggage, right? Like you're carrying around your big suitcases, and you might have to do that for a little while. I think for me, when I was really in the thick of experiencing the shame that I experienced recently, it was a few days. It was a few days, and it was just allowing it to be there, allowing it to do whatever it was doing, but not get caught up in the stories about it. Not allow myself to get caught up in all the thinking that typically throughout my life would come when I felt an emotion quite like shame. So next one is redirect again and again and again. Just redirect your awareness back to your body. Just back to your body as you're going through this process, because again, that brain is going to be sneaky. It is so sneaky. So the more that you can redirect yourself back into your body, the more that you're going to allow it to continue to do what it needs to do in order to flow through you. The next one is take some deep breaths. Breathing throughout this process is massive. And I think taking deep and intentional breaths is so, so important when you go through this process. Observe the sensations as they pass through you. Again, like I said earlier, just being really specific and really clear about what is going on. I think one of the things about that ends up really benefiting you throughout your life is I now know, based on all the work that I've done in my own life and through coaching, I now know exactly what shame feels like when it comes up for me. I now know pretty much exactly what doubt feels like when it comes up for me, because I've done the work to recognize the sensations that are in my body when that emotion comes up for me. So finally, notice that you are okay. You're stronger than you've realized, and that you are alive. And that is really, I think, the key to all of this is that we are here on this earth living this human experience. And so much of it, I think, we can get caught up. We can get caught up in our heads and caught up in our minds and really think that life is out to get us, right? That we are just not meant for, great things in our lives. And the more that you do work like this, the more that here, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see better. The more that you can do this type of work for yourself, the more I think it's really going to change the way that you show up, the way that you show up for yourself, and the way that you show up in the world. And I think that is one of the greatest superpowers that you can ever have for yourself, is showing up with more intention, which is really, I think, where we're going to be going tomorrow when we talk about intention. So last thing I wanted to do, actually two things I want to do before we end our live today. So first is I want to share my screen one more time. Let's get here. Okay, so this is something called a feelings wheel. The more that you do this kind of work, the more that you put the work in to become more aware of your emotions and how your emotions show up for you, the more I think it could really benefit you to get even more specific, right? It can be easy to know anger from happy, right? But do you know hostile from violated, or furious from dismissive? I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing a couple out there. But basically, the more that I have done this kind of work, the more that I have really recognized the value and the power of being as specific as I possibly can with the emotions that I feel when I feel them. Because being specific with the emotions that you feel when you feel them is going to allow you to become so much more aware when you feel that emotion, that that is the emotion that you're feeling. I mean, I bet you can relate to, here, I'm going to stop sharing again. I bet you can relate to sometimes really feeling crappy about something, or just not feeling good about something and not really knowing why, not really being clear why you're feeling so icky about something. And that is where this work comes in, is one, to start to become more aware of the thoughts and beliefs that have triggered the emotion. And two, is to really dive in and understand what is the emotion specifically that's underlying that thought and belief. Because when you do that, you can then be able to make that shift so much easier and say to yourself, is this the emotion that I really want to be feeling? Can I learn to become more intentional to be able to shift consciously the emotion that I'm feeling to the emotion that I want to be feeling? And that's, I think, where you can use your energy, your emotions as another power. Because basically, what I have found in my own life is the energy that I feel with fear is very similar to the energy I feel with excitement. Right? The energy I feel with doubt is really similar to energy that I might feel when I'm motivated, when I'm, focused on a goal. And so what I have learned to do throughout my life is be able to, as I'm processing an emotion of fear, for example, once I have allowed myself to acknowledge and understand that it's there, I can also, if I'm in a position where I can't switch gears, I don't have time to feel it all the way through, I can use that energy to my advantage. And I do often. Like right now, I may be nervous, but I can use that nervous energy to be able to show up and give my best, the best job that I can, knowing that there are some nerves, but that's okay, because I'm going to use them to the best of my advantage. So, okay, let me make sure I got everything. Boom, 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 boom. All right, one last thing before we set you free. So, if you have not if you're not familiar with my work, if you've not kind of seen some of the other videos and things that I've done, I am a life coach for women in HR. And I have a program that is coming up next week that I would love to share with you. I'm going to share my screen one last time. Okay. So much fun. Okay. So I have a program that is coming up next week that I would love to share with you called Alive to Thrive. It's a 6-week program that I've created for women in HR to help build confidence and really learn how to create a life of greater fulfillment and authenticity. And it is something that I am so proud of, because it really is something that I have used my own journey in terms of my 20-year career in HR, building confidence and recognizing in myself that as much as I was so proud of the growth that I had in my time in HR, I also recognized that I would burn myself out, that I would just push myself to the point of exhaustion and overwhelm. And so this program really is about how can we learn how to show up as our best selves, regardless of what other people think, regardless of what other people feel, and regardless of the chaos that is going on around us in our lives, which there's a whole lot of it, isn't there? So that is what Alive to Thrive is all about. And so I would love to share more information about the program. The website is jentrum.com, JENTRUMM. I'll drop the link to the program and the information about the program in the comments for today's session. And so I want to end and just ask these 4 questions of you today. Number 1, do you want to show up in your life with the confidence to become the person that you know you're authentically meant to be? Number 2, are you tired of that inner bully who holds you back and makes you question your value and your worth in your life? Number 3, do you consistently underestimate your value, your self-worth, and your contributions? And number 4, are you ready to commit to the changes that will allow you to seize control of your inner warrior and say yes to the highest and most fulfilled version of yourself? So if the answer to that question is yes, I would love to encourage you to check out my Alive to Thrive program. And I would love to welcome you to a 15-minute discovery call. Let's get to know one another. Let's talk a little bit about what's involved in the program and see whether or not it may be a good fit for you. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. And I want to thank you so much for being here today, for giving me your time. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye now.